Hi everyone and welcome back to the second part of the Anything You Want tutorial. My name is Eran and in this part we are going to continue from the point that we just left off of the first part. And the first part was quite interesting. We built some kind of a surreal scene and the theme of relationship. So this is the reason why we have a ship on the screen. The rest is all pure imagination. So we did some kind of compositing, rotoscoping, some kind of stabilizing, and a lot of nice tricks. If you haven't watched part 1, I invite you to do so right now. But if you did, let's just continue. And here in my timeline, I have 3 layers. There are 2 text layers, which we are going to tackle at the end of this. I just prepared them in order to save some time. The shy icon is enabled here, so I'm going to press here and the shy layer will disappear, or layers. Now we are ready to start the journey. I also mark down the point where I want my crash zoom effect to start. And by crash zoom, I basically mean that we are going to use this footage, let me double click on it, in order to open it in the footage window. And these is our 2 heroes, the man and the woman. If I'm going to go to the beginning here and just scrub this, we can see the relationship scenario here. He is trying to get her help by deciding which picture should he hang on the wall. Obviously now she's satisfied, so I guess that we can be satisfied as well. We're also going to use this clip from this point onward. The whole first part is not really relevant. You can try and work with it yourself if you like. However, I already marked an in and out for the things that I want to use. So I'm going to place my cursor here at the correct spot, come back to the footage window, and press here on this little icon, which will going to perform an overlay edit to my timeline. However, now I'm facing a new problem because the clip is not sufficient. I mean, we don't have enough frames for it to play until the end of our 10 seconds spot. So I'm going with the easy solution now, which is going to the layer menu, and under time, I'm going to enable time remapping. Now I can add a keyframe at the place here, which will be the first one, the first spot which will not move, and then I'm going to stretch my clip and move the last keyframe until the end. So this will slow down my clip, and I'm also going to turn on frame blending into the pixel frame mode. There is 2 modes here, and if we are going to look at it from the layer view, we can easily see that under frame blending, there is a pixel motion option. This is the option that I like to use because it will actually calculate for us new frames and not going to dissolve between one frame to the other. In order to turn it completely on, we also have to enable frame blending here in the timeline. Now, I'm not going to actually use this clip because at this stage, I want to take this clip and do the perspective tracking, the 4-corner tracking, not here inside After Effects, but rather in Mocha, which is bundled with every copy of After Effects. Obviously, you can do it here, but from my experience, Mocha is much more accurate and will do it without a problem. So you're probably going to get better results using Mocha. But in order to get this clip from After Effects to Mocha, we must render it. So what you need to do is shut the eye off for this clip, then trim your timeline to start from here, and then go to the composition menu and create a movie out of your sequence. Just make sure that you use best settings and choose whatever output model you like. Now, I already did this. I already rendered this clip, so I'm not going to render it once again. There is a folder here called renders, and this is the clip which I rendered the same way I just showed you. So if I'm going to drag it from here and then place it over here and just snap it back to place, we will see the final clip or the final result. So at this point, you can either turn off the eye for this clip or completely get rid of it. Okay, so now we are talking. We have our two clips that we want to merge. I want to remind you once again, we want to take this guy here, and I'm going to double click once again to reset my working area. So we want to take this guy, this clip here, and at some point of time, we want to basically create a crash zoom effect, which means we're going to take it and zoom it inside this frame. And from this point onward, the frame will be replaced, the picture here will be replaced with our video, right? So this is the plan. This is what we are going to do. Then we're going to add the titles, and by then you will be all tired from hearing my voice. So I think that this is the point where I'm going to end this. But we are far from there. We have a lot of work in front of us. So first off, let's hop into Mocha. And here inside Mocha, I already import the clip and also create the tracking for you. So in order to save some time, I'm going to zoom here a little bit closer to the area that we want. And I'm pressing X in order to get quickly to the hand tool, and Z in order to zoom in and out into this picture. And this is a very straightforward tracking. All you need to do is just select your B spline or your X spline and just draw a simple shape around the area that you want to track. You don't have to be precise, and basically let Mocha do all of the work. So it will take some time, but once again, I already pre-did it. So we have our tracking in place. Next step after the tracking is done is actually to add your surface. And this is the point where you tell Mocha exactly which point or what you want to actually replace. So I place these four corners just on the edge of this picture. And as you can see, when I'm scrubbing backwards, the tracking is quite working. It's working actually pretty nice. So at this point, we are ready to export this tracking data from Mocha back to After Effects and continue to work over there. I'm going to use this Export Tracking Data button. I'm going to choose the After Effects corner pin option here and just copy it to the clipboard. Now I'm going to hide Mocha, return to After Effects, and this is very important. We need to make sure that we are pasting the information to the correct place, or sorry, the correct clip, and of course to the correct place. So we have our clip here, and remember, until this point, we do need the clip to stay at the same location and not do anything. Before I'm going to paste it, I just want to show you that if I'm going to open here the effects control, I already add 3 effects to this clip. So I'm going to enable the effect here, and first one is a minor level adjustment, nothing too special. Then a little bit of vibrance in order to get few more colors back to the screen. And then very important, I also added the noise HLS with the grain mode. And I did this in order to try and match the look and feel of the synthetic clip that we created to this footage. So I tried to match the graininess, the levels, the vibrance, everything. So as soon as we will paste this information from Mocha, the 2 clips will look as they are at the same light condition, and the composition will basically look a little bit better. Okay, so now we are ready to move forward. I'm going to select this clip, go under the edit menu and ask After Effects to split the layer. So now I have 2 copies, the one that I don't want to mess with, which is this one, and the one that needs to get all the tracking data. Now I have to make sure that this is the clip that I'm going to paste the information. So I'm going to turn off the eye, and you know what, let me just rearrange it so we can see it a little better. And now I'm going to go to edit, paste. And if everything is okay as we planned, we have the tracking in place. And of course, we can create a short run preview to check that everything is working. I think that it is working quite nice. So the tracking is behind us, almost behind us. We have this part and then we have this part. We still need to generate the crash zoom effect. But before we will do it, I want to replace this effect, the default corner pin effect, with a different kind of effect, which is much more flexible and will help me when I'm going to do the crash zoom effect. The effect that I'm referring to is called power pin. And what I'm going to do is just drag this just under the current effect. Now I have to copy all of the keyframe data from this effect to the other effect. There is a script that will allow you to do it, and you can also use expression, but I'm going to do it fairly quickly just by copy and paste the information from one to another. So I'm going to open everything I need to see here in the timeline. Make sure I'm going to select the upper left corner, Control C, and then select it here. This one called top left, and do Command V or Control V. And then I'm going to repeat this for the rest of the 3 points here. And this is the last one. So very quick and easy way to transform between those two effects. And at this point, we can either turn off or just delete the original effect. So why we did this? The first reason we did this is that this effect actually gives us more controls after the fact. I'm going to zoom here to 100%, and we can see that we almost got the picture in the right place. If you look carefully, you can see that there is, or there was something there before we did our match move here. And of course, we can come back to Mocha and try to refix it and reshape it, but this is the reason we choose to use this power pin effect. There is an option here to use this expansion after the tracking is in place while keeping all the perspective without any changes, so intact. I'm going to do so just in order for us to fix actually the correct aspect ratio of the frame, because this frame, as we can see it here, let me just undo the little modification that we did and also press Command Shift H in order to hide this keyframe information. This frame is actually not in the correct 16:9 pixel aspect ratio that we are working. So we need to stretch it after the fact. The easiest way to do it is just using this effect. So I'm going to eye match it by maybe, I don't know, maybe 15 pixels to the left. And let's also try 15 pixels to the right. I think that we've gone too far here. So maybe 12 and 12. And you have, once again, to eyeball it. There is no like exact math. Of course, you can do the exact math, but I'm not going to bother with it. I think that it is working quite nicely. And if there is a need, we can also stretch it a little bit, maybe 2% at the top and maybe also 2% at the bottom. So now we are rearranging our frame and we are keeping the nice 16:9 aspect ratio that we had before. Everything looks good, except that it doesn't look as good as before because it's just look like somebody stick it on top of everything. We need to create very, very subtle, I think maybe an inner shadow here, just to make sure that it will look convincing. Once again, I'm going to select this layer and use the same trick from part 1, which is add a layer style of an inner shadow to this layer. Now I'm going to open it and maybe play a little bit with the distance. I don't think that we need it so high, maybe even 1 pixel, and also play a little bit with the size. It needs to be very, very gentle just to get the idea that this is actually living here at the same place. Now let's zoom back and let's return few frames and just create a quick run preview just to see that from this point onwards we are in good shape, and I think that we are. I'm going to wait for it a little bit in order for everybody to look at the results while it's playing. So something like this looks very convincing. Of course, we lost the reflections here, but for this tutorial, I'm not going to recreate them. It's out of the scope of this lesson. You can, of course, recreate them yourself if you fancy. I'm going to settle with this result. Okay, I'm going to zoom a little bit back, and now comes the challenging part. Now we need to create this crash zoom effect, which I'm keep talking about every time or all the time. And of course, there are a couple of ways to approach this. I want to introduce you to my solution. I think it's the simplest one, although it takes a little bit of patience. It will get us to the point we want to be. I think it the less steps at the fastest pace. So let's once again analyze this. We want to move from this to this with the crash zoom effect. The crash zoom effect is actually going to be only 10 frames long. So I'm going to zoom here and press shift page down just to mark myself the area of this effect. I'm also going to drag another marker here just to make sure that I'm going to say that this is the end of the animation here. And I'm going to select these two layers and once again repeat the splitting process. I'm going to take one of these and put it here. So now we know that we have the situation that we need. Basically just these two guys. This is the area that we need to work on in order to create the transition. Okay, so I'm going to press U in order to see the keyframes for this layer. Then I'm going to press the tilde key just to maximize the timeline on the screen. And from this point onwards, I'm going to marquee everything here and delete all the keyframes that are not relevant to the story here. All right. I'm also going to select all the keyframes here in between and delete them as well. So what I'm basically doing here is only leaving one keyframe here and another keyframe here. It's not the best interpolation, but it will help us to get things a little bit more quicker in terms of matching those two into a one continuous scene. Now we also need to reset the effect in order for the picture frame to come back to its full frame glory, something like this. So the easiest way to do it is just basically to reset the corner pin effect here, the power pin effect, and then go back to those three guys. I'm going to once again maximize the screen, select them, and this is so you can see that there is actually a reset button. And you have to make sure that you only select those three here at the beginning and then right click and reset it. Now when we come back, we can see that indeed our picture is covering the full frame scene, and then slowly it travels to the place that it needs to be, and from that the tracking takes place. Now we only need to do the same for this video. So I'm going to press P, Shift S, and maybe also Shift R, just in case we need to create some kind of rotations. Now, before we'll start to create the keyframes for this layer, it's a good idea to try and guess where would be the best place to put the anchor point for this layer. I'm going to use the pan behind tool, which will allow me to move the anchor point to any place I need. So I will stick it right here at the left corner of the frame. It might not be the perfect spot, but it will help a lot during this process. Okay, so I'm going to record keyframe for position, scale and rotation, move backwards one frame, and then just try to scale it to the correct place, and maybe just a touch of position as well. Okay, next frame, or should I say the frame before, so previous frame. I'm going to repeat the same thing, the same move. So I'm basically just eyeballing this to the correct spot. Now it does look a little bit tedious, but since it is only for 10 frames, I think this is the fastest and easiest solution. And trust me, at the end it will look great because we will have a hell of a motion blur on top of these layers in order for everything to look like it is indeed a crash zoom effect. I think that here I'm also going to give it a little bit of a rotation. I'm pressing Command just in order to really work in small numbers. Okay, so I'm not going to make you sit and watch the whole procedure. We will move forward a little bit in time to the place where I already finished this stage. Okay, so there we are. I've created the rest of the animation, and as we see, it already starts to look pretty convincing. Let me just run preview few frames from here, and then we are getting there. See, so a little bit of a labor work got us exactly where we needed. As I said, I'm sure there is ways to do it mathematically, but we are already done, so why even think about it? Now, it doesn't look convincing enough. There is few problems here. Of course, we have the quality issue, which we have to hide using the motion blur effect or the faux motion blur effect. And of course, this guy's head should stick on top of the frame here. So let's fix the head problem first and then attend to the motion blur. I'm going to create a new solid here, call it head mask. And I'm going to choose, you know what, the color doesn't really matter. I'm just going to choose some kind of a vivid color in order for me to see what I'm doing. Then press T and lower the opacity to 50%. And then make sure to stick this just on top of the layer that I need. I'm also going to trim it from here to here. Now let's find the way or the frame that we need to see. Take the pen tool and quickly, very quickly draw the shape of this head just on top of it. Now let's record the keyframe from the mask path. And once again, I'm going to fairly quickly just make sure that this mask just keep hiding or blocking whatever we need it to do. So something like this, and then once again, I'm going to, for the moment, I'm also going to hide this in order for me to see exactly what I need to see. Press Alt in order to select all the keyframes here. It doesn't need to be pixel perfect here, just needs to make sure that we are hiding or we are covering this guy's head. So something like this. Once again, select all the points. And once again, just move these masks to the place, and that's it. I think here we don't need to see it at all, so maybe a little bit. And I'm also going to animate the mask opacity, so I'm going to get a keyframe here on 100 and maybe a keyframe here on 0, so something like this, so it will appear at the correct place it needs to be. Okay, now we can turn the opacity all the way back to 100%, and we're actually going to use the head mask as an alpha inverted matte for this clip. So it should punch a hole in the scene, and of course we don't need to see it here. So once again, let me just make sure that our opacity keyframes for the mask is or are at the correct place. I'm also going to feather this mask a little bit so it will just look more natural. Okay, so this is the mask thing. Now we need to create some kind of a motion blur. Of course, we can try to activate the motion blur switch for both of the layers. It will have some kind of effect onto the layer below because it has obviously keyframes in terms of position and scale, so it will affect it, but it will not affect the picture so much. So you can try to see if this is something that you are satisfied from. Let's check it like this, and it's kind of work for me, but I will give you another alternative just in case you want to exaggerate the motion blur. We will create a new adjustment layer. Once again, place it just above the parts that we want to affect. We will rename it motion blur so we know what it's doing. And we will ask for the CC force motion blur effect. Just place it over here. And this should help a lot, I think. I will disable the After Effects motion blur and let this render by its own. You know what? I will remove it from this as well. Now it does improve the quality of everything. It solves the quality problem, and I think we can even take it higher. So let's try to raise the shutter angle to maybe 360, and if you get these banding issues, you can also raise the motion blur samples to a higher number, so maybe like 16, and this looks much more convincing to my opinion. Okay, let's run preview it from here and see what we have. Much more convincing, and the hardest part is behind us. So now that we've done with this interesting part, we can zoom back, enable once again the shy layer, and let's just turn on the eye for them. So we have two layers actually. The layer here is the title of the show, New Comedy Tonight at 7. This is very simple stuff. I just created a range selector with an opacity just to make this type itself on the screen. There's even a preset called typewriter which can do it for you. However, for the text itself, I want to do something which is a little bit more interesting. I actually want to use the pixels of the frame here in order to make the text just come out of it. Something which will look a little bit more professional. For that, I'm going to use one of my favorite effects, the CC Blobelize. Okay, and in order to create what I'm after, I need to get myself another copy of the layer here of the picture wall. So I'm going to select the picture wall layer and Command D or Control D in order to duplicate another copy, and then just place it above everything. So now, of course, we are hiding the nice work that we did, but this is just temporary. Now I'm going to drag the CC Blobelize on top of this layer, and this means that it will use this pixel of this layer in order to create the effect. I'm also going to turn off the eye for the text so it won't get just in the way of the things that we are doing. Now, as I showed you, we have a composition here which I'm going to use. I'm going to double click on this composition just once again to show you this is a simple text. If you're after the font that I'm using here named Vador, just to let you know. And I also apply a fast blur with a value of 6 to these letters, and this will contribute a lot because I'm going to use this effect as a compound effect. So I'm going to use this layer, and this is the reason why it is pre-comped here inside this layer or inside this composition here. So let's choose the picture wall that we just duplicated, open up the blobbiness here, and for the blob layer, I will ask it to use the text and generate the letters from it. Now I want to zoom in a little bit just in order for you to see how lovely this effect looks. Of course, the default is not always the first way to go. You can use the lightness, luminance, or the alpha, and this is what I'm going to choose. And then you can play with the softness of the effect and with the cutaway in order to get to the place that you need. So this is the place that I want to be. So let's just zero out the softness completely and just play with the cutaway just in order for us to get exactly what we need. I might want to add a layer style in order to make it a little bit better, but in this case I think that before adding the layer style we also can try to affect it with the built-in light that we have in the filter. So we can change it actually from distant light to point light, and this will allow us to just move the light across the screen here, which is very, very nice. So let's go to the beginning of the text where the text should start, and let's record a keyframe from the light position, go to the end of the timeline, and just create a very, very simple animation. So this is already start to look nice. I don't want to see the text just appearing in place. I want to animate it as well. Let's just say that across maybe 1.5 seconds, it should reveal itself like this. So I'm going to only create keyframe for the softness here. And then once again, press I or go to the beginning of my layer and just crank it until I'm not going to see anything on screen. So until this will just disappear. And this creates a very nice effect, like bubbles is forming the text here. See where this effect got its name? Blobel Layer. I think it's very, very convincing, very, very nice, and if I might say, also original. Now I still think that we need to make it a little bit more obvious, a little bit more divided from the background. So I'm going to go under layer and add a outer glow layer style. Let's open up the properties and maybe sample one of the color from the sky. Now this should be very soft effect. So I'm going to give it a quite large number at the size here, maybe 70, and then reduce the opacity. So maybe something like this. It should be quite subtle, but it's there. So you see, we can almost feel that there is a light coming out of her shirt and helping this effect to look a little bit more obvious, more nice. Okay, I think that this looks good. So we can drill this down, re-enable the text, and just scrub it very fast in order to see that it is working. And of course, when I see it like this, I think that we should revisit the layer styles once again and just control the opacity of the layer style itself. So just record a keyframe here, and I don't want to see it over here. So I just want this to start basically from nothing and easy with the effect here. So just keyframes, 2 keyframes for the opacity under the layer styles. And I think that this is it. I think that we are ready to go to the first frame, change the resolution to full and go to full screen and create ourselves our final and last preview. And I will also add some kind of music just in order for you to get a sense of how everything is working together. So let's take a look. Alright, so this sums up the second part of this tutorial. Although those 2 tutorials were a little bit longer than usual, hopefully you picked up a few techniques and tips and saw how Artbeats clips can come to the rescue. If you want to dig in deeper, you can download the project file with the HD proxies inside and play along a little bit more. Until next time we'll meet, this is Eran for Artbeats.com saying goodbye, take care and be creative.